All right. Well, we already did our sermon illustration for today. So just a quick reminder what it is, especially for anybody who's watching this and didn't see the earlier part. Our sermon illustration for today is here's the church, here's the steeple. And you all know how to do it now, right? It's hard for me to do while I'm doing it up here, but we're going to do it one more time. It's hard for me to do because I have a handheld mic. All right. But you interlace your fingers with the fingers in the middle. Do it one more time. This is going to really help us remember today. You say, here's the church. I can't hear. I hear like a third of you. Here's the church. Here's the steeple. Open the doors. And there's all the people. You got to wiggle your fingers. Okay. Now do it the other way. Interlace your fingers so they're on the outside now. Here's the church. Here's the steeple. Open the doors. But where's all the people? I have such a strong memory of my grandmother doing that with me, my granny. Where's all the people? That's how she said it. It was fantastic. So this is a profound children's game. It is profound for a number of reasons. It can be used to teach sort of evangelism or care for people who are outside the church. It is really fun and funny. I don't know if you thought it was fun. I think it's fun and funny if you're in the right headspace for it, especially with little kids. It is also so clearly created by church ministry leaders. Because if you've never been a church ministry leader, you don't know. But the thing that church ministry leaders are always thinking about, whether it's youth leaders, young adults leaders, children's church leaders, the pastor of the church, every single time you hold an event, as the event is getting ready to start, you think, is anyone going to show up? Are there going to be any people? Or are there going to be many people here today? And of course, people are often late to church events, right? Because it's not work. You don't get in trouble if you're not there on time. And so you always have this thought, are people going to be there? So this idea of whether the church is empty or full is something that is on the mind of church ministry leaders all the time. In fact, we try to have it on our minds less. That's usually a goal. You might have this idea in your head that, it's just a modern problem. If maybe 50 or 100 years ago, probably the churches were full all the time. Or certainly 500 years ago or 1,000 years ago, the churches were full all the time. That is not true. As a lifelong, or at least now, 2 or 3 decades student of church history, I can tell you that it has always been a problem. In the early church, they were trying to get people to come to church more often. In medieval Europe, they were trying to get people to come to church more often. In the 1800s in North America, the big problem was people weren't coming to church enough. They were trying to get people to come to church more often. And today, it's still the same. This has always been a problem. How are you going to get the people into the church? That's the big question. What is it going to take? And it's going to take more than you could possibly imagine to get the people into the church. That's what Revelation 5, 6, and 7 are about. And that's what we're going to jump into today. We were in chapter 5 a little bit last week. And last week was kind of I told you I was going to show you something profound about chapters 4 and 5, and then I didn't get to it. So hopefully we'll get there this week. It is profound. We're in this series. We need a revelation. Some of the big points of this series we're continuing to reiterate, say again and again. Revelation reveals the reality behind the world. It's a deeper level of reality. What we see there is that evil is real. It's everywhere. And also God reigns and Jesus is Lord. Those two things are to say the same thing. God reigns and Jesus is Lord. Today's message last week was Open the Door, because we saw this change in chapter 4 in the book of Revelation, where there's a door that's opened in the heavens. It's not just that heaven is opened, it's specifically a door or a gate that John sees open in the heavens, and he is called to go through it into the heavenly realm. Today's message is entitled, Open the Doors and See All the People. To remind you where we are in this book of Revelation, this is very important. In the book of Revelation, to understand it, we need to understand really some kind of extreme detail sometimes. What do these particular words mean and exactly what is being said? What does the symbolism mean? But we also need to keep in mind the bigger picture of where we are in the book and how things fit together. Because a lot of how people have gone wrong with the book of Revelation is they take just one section and they don't look at the context around it. And then they assume some things about it and they end up in completely the wrong place. So this is the outline, the first part that we've already been through, the letters to the churches and the vision of the Son of Man and the candlestands, the lampstands. That section is all from the perspective of the earth. And now we are into the section where everything is from the perspective of heaven. Everything is in the heavens, even though the earth is involved now. And we're in this first part of that vision, the throne room and the seven seals. And I'm going to zoom us in a little bit, so you haven't seen this one yet. So we're going from this line, the throne room and the seals. We're zooming into that one, the throne room and the seven seals. And this has several parts to it. We looked last week at the vision of the throne room. And I'm going to give just a brief recap of that vision today because we need to remember it. It's the throne room. It's a throne room and it's the heavenly temple. It's both. And so we compare it to the Israelite temple, the temple that Moses created, the tabernacle. And then after that vision, we move into chapter 5, which is all about this scroll. We just barely started to look at that last week. The scroll with 7 seals and who's going to be able to open the scroll. And everybody wants the scroll to be opened. And then chapter 6, the six of the seals are opened. Not all 7, 6 of them. And that includes the very famous 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. So every seal has something else that comes out of it. Almost all the things that come out of the seal are things that we would normally think of as horrible tragedies. So we're going to talk about that. Why is that? And then in chapter 7, which I hope we'll get to today, is the 144,000 are sealed. There's this section where God's about to do even more destruction to the earth, but he says, first go and seal all of my people. Go find them. He sends out these angels, and what they find is 12,000 from each of the tribes of Israel. And 12 times 12 is, pop quiz, 144. Yep, so 12 times 12,000 is 144,000. And then the great multitude. So then we see this great multitude that comes out of the great tribulation. And this is this vision where we have people from every tribe, nation, language group, all gathered around the throne, all worshiping the God and the Lamb, who is Jesus. Okay, so that's kind of the outline. So today we'll get through hopefully much of this. And we'll see something, I think, profound about it. So now we're going back into chapter 4. This is the recap part to remember what we saw. So John was called up into the heavens. Come up here, and I'm going to show you, the Lord says to John, what is about to take place. What's going to happen after these things? What are these things? Maybe all of history, maybe John's time. And what he sees, we don't have a picture of what he sees, although somebody tried to draw it last week. I'll have to get that drawing up. If you want to draw me a picture of what the Revelation throne scene actually looks like, I would love that. But it's got to be exactly accurate, okay? You got to put everything in the right place. That's the important part. There are tons of pictures of it out there, and they got things in the wrong place. So here's the order. The order of what John sees in the heavens is the order of the tabernacle or the temple from the Old Testament. That's because, like we said last week, Moses saw something very much like what John saw. And so did many others. Ezekiel saw something a lot like what John saw. So this is an Old Testament prophet. I'm pretty convinced that the Apostle Paul also saw something very much like what John sees. But all of these other guys were told that they could not write it down. At least not all the details. Whereas John is finally told, don't seal the scroll. Open it. Tell everybody what you saw. And this is a big change in history. But Moses, even though he couldn't write it down, exactly what he saw, he is told to build a temple. And the temple has these elements. I'll say temple, but I really mean tabernacle. So it started off, of course, as a tent in the desert. Later, it became a huge building, the temple. But I'm just going to say temple. Okay, you know what I mean. So outside the entrance to the building, okay, was a big courtyard, and it had in it, remember, an altar and this, it says a laver here. It's like a big, giant wash basin. Okay, and the altar was for offering sacrifices. That's where you killed the lambs and the goats and the bulls, and their blood was drained into the altar. All this stuff happened there. And then some of that blood was sometimes brought into the temple for certain ceremonies. That blood represented a payment for sin. When sin happens, it can only be fixed. It can only be dealt with by blood, by death. That's why Jesus has to die on the cross. There's also this wash basin, and that was for ceremonially cleansing the priests, right? So they would wash themselves, wash their hands, wash their instruments. That was part of the ritual. Then you would go into the temple, and in this central section of the temple there, which is called the holy place, there were three things. One was the candelabra, the menorah with 7 lights. So one candle stand with 7 different lights. And then you had the table of the showbread, the bread of the presence. So they had bread in there baked fresh every day that represented the presence of God himself in some way. And then you had the altar of incense. So they would burn incense on this altar. So different than the altar of sacrifice, okay? The altar of incense doesn't have anything killed on it. They just threw incense on it, which would make smoke. And that represented the prayers of God's people rising up to heaven. And then, of course, you went in further, but only one priest, one day, one time a year, would go in further. And that's where the Ark of the Covenant was, inside the Holy of Holies, or the Holy, Holy, Holy. That's what that inner room is called, the Holy, Holy, Holy. And that's where the presence of the Lord himself lived on top of the tabernacle, or on top of the ark. And you see there's also these cherubim. These are living creatures with 4 different faces and wings. And you see here a depiction of the tabernacle, the ark itself. And on the ark was empty and had some stuff in it to remember the history of Israel, but the important part of the ark was on top. That top part of the ark, we could do a whole sermon probably just on the word that they used to describe the top of the ark, but I won't. So we could translate it as the atonement cover, or which is how the NIV version translates it, or you could translate it probably better, although it's complicated as to why it's a better translation. We could translate it as the mercy seat. It was the place where the Israelites thought of the Lord as sitting there. That was his throne. But it was also a place of atonement, a place where sin was dealt with. So the sacrifices that happened outside, one day a year, the priest would come in and take some of the blood from those sacrifices and sprinkle it and wipe it with his finger on the mercy seat itself. And when the sacrifice came onto the mercy seat, the sin of the people was wiped away, at least for another year. That was the ritual. That was what the Lord told them to do. And it's also where he dwelled, so there's all this stuff about, smoke that went up there and all this stuff the priest had to do so he didn't die in the presence of the Lord. Okay, so this is what John sees. This is what he sees when he goes into the heavens. Not exactly this, but something very much like this. And so he sees a throne. It's the mercy seat that he sees. That's what's at the center. And what he sees is kind of like this thing that radiates outwards from the throne. So on the throne in the center, I'm piecing together a whole bunch from chapters 4 and 5 here because he doesn't tell it in order. But on the throne, you've got the Lord and you've got the Lamb. You've got 2 people somehow on the throne, and yet they are one. Jesus and his Father. And that's who's on the throne in the center. And then you've got, outside of that, the throne has a ring around it, kind of like the veil of the temple. It has a ring that looks like an emerald rainbow, John says. It's like the veil of the temple, except you can see through it. It's translucent. So what's happened here is that the temple is now open. The holy, 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 you can now see into it. Something has changed in the heavens. That's what John is seeing. Outside that ring around the throne, or maybe right in it, I'm not sure, are the 4 cherubim, the 4 living creatures. They are like guardians of the throne. Outside of that, we have a ring of 24 elders. And we said last week, who are the elders? What are they like? If we were to compare them to the temple, they're like the priests in the temple, right? This group of people who are kind of close to the throne, they're kind of in this area, right? They're not right next to it. They're outside the living creatures. But these 24 elders are worshiping continually. That's what they do. What are the 24 elders in John's vision? What do they represent? Well, 24 is a certain number times 2, right? It's 12 times 2. And what does 12 always represent in the Bible? Always, always, always. It represents the people of God in some way, every single time. Sometimes it represents the Israelites in the Old Testament. That's because Jacob, whose name became Israel, had how many sons? 12 sons. So 12 always represents either the people of Israel or the wider people of God. Sometimes it represents, like people of God past in the Old Testament and now in the present era. And so that's what these 12 priests, these 12 elders represent, right? They represent the people of God throughout all the ages, before Jesus and after. You also see, John sees in his vision, he sees 7 lampstands burning, and they are, he says, the 7 spirits of God. So he sees the candelabra. But just like in the last vision, in the first vision from earth, it's not one now. It's not one with 7 branches. It's 7 different lampstands. That means the light of God is not just in one place anymore. And I think that's why 7 spirits of God, that's why he uses that imagery, is because the Spirit of God has now filled the earth. The Spirit of God is everywhere to all people. It's not just in one place anymore. He also, later in the vision, not until chapter 6, but we are going to see that John sees the altar of incense. He sees it, and the prayers of the saints, the prayers of God's people are going up to the Lord from the altar. He does not see, at any point, he does not see the table of the bread. The table of the bread is missing from the vision. And when you back out a little bit further, he also sees way outside all this vision, he sees a sea of glass, right? This is like the wash basin, but it's massive. It's a sea that's big enough to cleanse the whole world. Do you see it? It's become massive now. It became bigger and bigger throughout history, but now it's so big it could cleanse the whole world. Okay? He does not see at any point in the vision, the other object that is missing is the altar of sacrifice. Okay? And we'll just say, instead of making you guess at it, the reason those 2 things are missing is because Jesus died on the cross. So instead of having to sacrifice something way far away from God and bring it all the way in by the priests, Jesus has died once for all, and now he has entered. The Lamb, who looks like it was slain, is sitting on the throne. So no more sacrifices. No more sacrifices. And no more bread, because he is the presence of God. Jesus is the bread. He's the bread of life. So there's no more table of the bread. So what's being said here is not exactly that these are sort of like physical objects in heaven, but these represent the reality in heaven. And Jesus' death and resurrection have changed the spiritual realm. The core of the universe is different. Okay, so that's all the recap. Now we're going to see something amazing. So we said last week, the heavenly temple is open, the way back to God is clear. The way is clear, but the question is, are any people following it? Or are any people going back to God? So we see chapter 5 makes a big change. In chapter 5, something starts to happen. And we said at the beginning of chapter 5, I think we got to this part last week, then I saw, John sees, in the right hand of the one who sits on the throne, a scroll with writing on both sides, sealed with 7 seals. And this scroll becomes the focal point. Really, it's the focal point of the entire rest of the book of Revelation, because everything else that happens is inside the scroll. Everything else that happens is inside the scroll. And we saw last week, I think we talked a little bit about this as well, there's this search. Everyone in heaven is desperate for someone to open the scroll. They are desperate. They are, even at one point, John sees all the souls The spirits or souls of all those who have been martyred, so killed for their faith. And they're all like underneath the altar of incense, all these souls of the martyrs. And what the martyrs are crying out for is how long? They're crying out to the Lord, how long? And how long until what? How long until the scroll is completely opened? That's what they're crying out for. And you see, even John, they search heaven and earth at first, and there's no one who's found who's worthy to open the scroll. And John, I take it it's kind of like, I don't know that John understands why the scroll is so important to open, but he can feel it. In this place, he can feel that we desperately need the scroll to be opened. This is the sense, the direction of all of heaven. And so John weeps and weeps because no one is found to open the scroll. Uncontrollable grief and anguish when no one is found who can open it. So you get this sense of how desperate they are to open the scroll. Now, I want you to stop and think about that for a minute because we've already hinted at, and some of you know what is in the scroll. The scroll is full of absolute desolation and destruction. The scroll is full of suffering and death. Why in the world are they so desperate for the scroll to be opened? Why are they dying for this thing to be opened when people are going to die when it's opened? That's what's going to happen. We're going to come back to that. That's a huge question you need to answer for yourself in this passage. They're desperate for it to be opened. Of course, they find someone. In the vision, someone is found. And this is just a powerful moment. One of the elders turns to John and he says, "Do not weep. The Lion of the tribe of Judah, the Root of David, has triumphed. He is able to open the scroll and its 7 seals." And when that pronouncement is made, all of heaven goes crazy. They just go crazy. The Lamb is standing in the center of the throne. You now see more about the Lamb. He's got 7 horns. That means all power. He's got 7 eyes. That means all knowledge. He's got the 7 spirits of God. So you see here the Trinity. Some people say, oh, you don't find the Trinity in the Bible. It's everywhere in the Bible. Right here, who is sitting on the throne? The Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. One God is sitting on the throne, all 3. But you see the Lamb there on the center of the throne. The 7 spirits are in him, even though they're sent out into all the earth. He goes and he takes the scroll. The Lamb takes the scroll from the hand of the one who sits on the throne, from his Father. Jesus and the Father are one. And what happens next is, as I said, all heaven goes wild, right? So the living creatures, as soon as the Lamb has taken the scroll, the living creatures and the 24 elders, they fall down in worship. The worship in heaven before seemed otherworldly, out of this world, amazing worship. Now it goes tenfold, 100-fold, 100 times the worship that was happening before. Because now the thing they desperately wanted, for the scroll to be opened, they know it's about to happen. The Lamb is holding the scroll. And they've got, they all have harps. Like they fall down, but they're also playing music at the same time. All this is happening sort of at the same time. This is what true reality is like. I don't know. And they have golden bowls of incense. I don't know how they're playing their guitars while they hold the golden bowls of incense. It seems like you would need at least 4 hands to do all this. But they do it. They do it anyway. These harps were obviously not the huge kind we're used to. I like to think of it more as a guitar. Imagining Pastor Jason up there. I do. It helps me sort of make it more concrete in my mind. And the prayers, they're bringing out all the prayers. They're reminding God, or they're bringing back the prayers of God's people. When we pray, the only thing really from earth, other than the redeemed themselves, people who have come to Jesus, the only thing from the earth that we do that actually enters this heavenly place is our prayers. That's the only thing that makes it. So, people who don't have faith, who are totally outside of Christ, they often think praying, they make fun of it, right? Because it seems like doing nothing. And yet the truth is, it is the thing that lasts the most of all the things. It goes the furthest. Okay. And so they sing this new song. They create this new song. The worship is is intense at this point. You are worthy to take the scroll and open its seals because you were slain. With your blood you purchased for God persons from every tribe and language and people and nation. Notice what he says there, okay? You can take the scroll because you purchased people from all over the earth. You've made them to be a kingdom of priests to serve our gods. There's going to be this kingdom of redeemed people, redeemed human beings. And they're going to reign. They are going to rule the earth one day. And so then he turns. So you've got the elders singing this new song. And then he turns and he sees more and more. The next thing that he sees is further outside the throne, right? So this is now more rings to this sort of circle that's being created. He sees many angels, numbering thousands upon thousands, and 10,000 times 10,000. And the Greek text there is myriads of myriads, right? 10,000 times 10,000. It doesn't just mean 100 million angels, which would be 10,000 times 10,000. But it means like a number that's like a myriad was thought to be a number so high you can't count it. So a myriad times a myriad. It's like infinity, right? Such a big number, we can't even imagine it. He sees that many angels. So these are more angelic beings, not the 4 living creatures, but these are now outside. These are messengers, angels that go from heaven to earth. The kind of angels that are working right now in the world, even though we can't see them. And there are a countless number of them. They encircle the throne and the living creatures, and they start worshiping. So now you have 100 million angels or more, right? Worthy is the Lamb who was slain. So the worship has just gone next level in chapter 5. It's gone huge. And then, if that weren't enough, outside the angels, he sees every creature in heaven and on earth and under the earth and on the sea and all that is in them worshiping. So what are we talking about here? We're talking about all the animals and all the fish in the sea, every creature, all the bugs, mosquitoes and beetles, like everything that exists is worshiping because the Lamb has taken the scroll. That's why. Now, all of that is what John sees. And let me ask you this. Who is missing from the vision? You've got God at the center, Jesus. You've got the guardian living creatures. You've got the 24 elders who are like priests. They're like the priests. You've got 100 million angels, and you've got every creature in heaven and on earth. Who is missing from the vision? They're all crying out. What are they crying out for? Well, they've already kind of told us what's going to be in the scroll. What's going to be in the scroll is the redemption of the children of God. You are worthy to take the scroll because you were slain, and with your blood you purchased people for God from every nation, tribe, tongue, and language. So what's going to be in the scroll is it's going to be those people coming back to God. So now let me ask you again, are you there yet? What's missing from the vision? You built this heavenly temple. It's like a giant church building. There's the church, there's the steeple. John opens the doors and everyone's there except all the people. Where are the people? There's no people. There's a few. There's the priests, essentially, the elders, right? The ones who are sort of the first fruits, the first to follow. But all of them, there's some who have died, been martyred for Christ. And all of them are crying out for this scroll to be opened. Why? Because they want the people to come in. The only people in the church are the ministry leaders. That's it. They had church, the Lamb has been slain, the doors are open, the way back to God is clear, and no one is coming. No one is coming. This is a message. It's a message to the church. It's a message to the church then. It's a message to John personally. I'm sure John felt like this. I'm sure he felt like Jesus died and rose from the dead, and I spent my whole life trying to bring people to him, And only a small number, only just a fraction of the people that I've preached to have ever turned and begun to follow God. And now I'm on this island by myself. My whole government, my whole nation is against me. Where's the promise? Where are the multitudes of people who are going to turn back to God? Where are they? The answer, which we're going to see in a minute, is that the only way for them to come back is for the scroll to be opened. Why is all of heaven dying for this scroll to be opened? I've now said two things about what's in it. I've said what's in this scroll is death and destruction, tragedy, tribulation, beyond anything anyone had imagined. And I've also said what's in the scroll is the redemption of the people of God. And the answer as to why all of heaven is desperate for this scroll to be opened, even though it's full of death and destruction and suffering, is that it's the only way to bring the people into the temple. It's the only way that they can come to God. And they all know it. We often ask this question in our lives and about the world. Why are all these terrible things happening to me, to us? Because it's the only way to bring the people back to God. That's why. There is no other way, and heaven knows it. The Bible, many people in the Bible often compare this kind of idea to childbirth, actually. Childbirth is very painful, I've heard. And yet, it is the only way to bring new life. It's the only way. And so the Bible often uses this as an analogy for the way back to God and the future that God is bringing into the world. Jesus, this is in chapter 24, he's talking about the future of the world. Watch out that no one deceive you. Many will come in my name. You'll hear of wars and rumors of war. All kinds of bad things are going to happen in the world. Such things must happen, but the end is still to come. Nation will rise against nation, kingdom against kingdom. There will be famines and earthquakes. All these are the beginnings of birth pains. What's he saying? There's going to be suffering that comes in the world. It's going to be like a woman going through labor. Some pains at first, and then increasing, and finally extreme pain, the worst of all, and then a child is born into the world, the thing everyone wants. And what is every pregnant woman who's in her third trimester, 9th month, what does she desperately want? For labor to begin. That's what's happening in heaven. That's why they're desperate for the scroll to be opened, even though the scroll is full of suffering and pain. This same analogy gets developed many times by Jesus and others in the Bible. This is with his disciples on the night that he was arrested. They're sad. He's going to the Father. They can't understand. What does it mean a little while until you're going to be back? And they don't know yet. It's going to be thousands of years. They have this suspicion. He said, "Are you asking about why I said a little while?" He says this, "Truly I tell you, you will weep and mourn as the world rejoices, but you will grieve, but your grief will turn to joy. A woman giving birth to a child has pain because her time has come, but when her baby is born, she forgets the anguish because of her joy that a child is born into the world." This is what's about to happen in heaven. So it is with you, he says. Romans, Paul uses the exact same illustration. Let's jump forward. Oh, how much time we got? Yeah, we got enough time to get there. We'll get up into chapter 7. And I'll show you a couple of things, and we might recap a little bit of chapter 7 next time. But chapter 6, we're just jumping through real quick, because in chapter 6, things get opened up. The scroll begins to be opened. And you don't really there's not a whole lot of explanation you need here, really. The Lamb opens, and every time he opens a seal, there's a voice first. So the Lamb opens a seal, and then something speaks. In the first 4 cases, it is one of the living creatures. Speak in a voice like thunder, "Come." And for the four living creatures, what comes is one of the horsemen of the apocalypse. And the horsemen get progressively worse. The first horseman is a conqueror, a single world conqueror who is bent on conquest. He's going to take over everyone. And the second horseman that comes is general warfare, the red horse. The first one's a white horse. Second one is a red horse. This is after the first horseman comes and tries to conquer everything, then just everyone fights with each other, every nation, fighting against every other nation. When you get to the third, did I skip it? Oh, yeah, the third is like economic collapse, right? The black horse. Oh, it's so dark you can't even see it, really. The black horse is economic collapse, and the grain and all the food is struck so that things become very expensive. And then you have general disease and death. The fourth horse is death itself, but it seems the thing that's added on seems to be plague in this case, because there already was famine and sword, but now we got plague as well. The fifth seal is like a change. This is where you see those who had been slain under the altar, who are crying out, "How long, sovereign Lord, holy and true, until you judge the inhabitants of the earth and avenge your blood?" Each of them is given a white robe, but they're told to wait longer. Until what? What are they told to wait for? Until the full number of your brothers and sisters has come in. And then the sixth seal, which is the last one to be opened at this point, is a great earthquake. It's celestial. It's universal in nature. Actual things in heaven, in outer space, are changing in some way. The sun is turned black, and the moon is turned to blood, and the stars fall from the sky. And chapter 6 ends with just people on earth who are not following the Lord, just terrified. They cry out to the mountains. They hide in caves and among the rocks. And they cry out to the mountains, "Fall on us and hide us from the one who sits on the throne and from the wrath of the Lamb." And again, notice what a strong tension there is here. It's just so different. What we can see, even though the Lamb is all-powerful at this point, he is reigning, the desire of all of heaven is to bring all the human beings in. The desire is still that everyone would come in. And yet, the reaction on earth is just terrified of the Lord and afraid and not willing to come in. This is how human beings act again and again. Okay, the great day of their wrath has come. So, into chapter 7 then. Here we have two things happen in chapter 7, and they are very, very likely. Many people have thought they are different things, but most people think, and I think very much so, that they are the same thing happening twice in chapter 7. The 144,000 are sealed. We're not going to spend a lot of time on this. I already alluded to it earlier. The seventh seal is about to be opened. It's going to be the worst seal of all. Okay, it's going to be the worst one. And so God says, first, before you do anything else, go and seal my servants. Go find them and mark them on their foreheads with a seal. Now remember, what is he breaking off of the scroll? Seals. Right? This is the same kind of thing. They are now sealed. The servants of God are now marked as belonging to the Lord. And how many of them are marked? Well, we get this. We get 144,000 from all the tribes of Israel. And then from every tribe, there's 12,000 who are marked. I might go back into this at some point. There's a lot here. There's one tribe that's missing. I'll leave it to you to figure out which tribe is missing. That can be homework for the week. Why is that tribe missing? Oh, it has connections to the rest of the book. 12 always represents what? The people of God. Always represents the people of God. So this is not really about the literal Israelites. At this point, there is no tribe of Reuben. There is no tribe of Gad. These no longer exist in the world by the time John is living. This is all the people of God through all the ages. That's what it means. A myriad times, 10,000 times the people of God. All the people of God through all the ages. And then we come here to the great multitude in chapter 7. And here's what you see here in chapter 7. After this I looked, and there before me was a great multitude that no one could count, from every nation, tribe, people, and language, standing before the throne and before the Lamb. Now, finally, after 6 seals have been opened, finally the people are in the temple. They're there. They were wearing white robes and holding palm branches in their hands. And they're worshiping. The people have shown up to church. I feel like this every Sunday at about 10:15. Hallelujah. People have now shown up. They're there in the temple. Of course, this is a million times my joy. Salvation belongs to our God. They've been saved. And all the angels are standing around the throne, and all the elders and the 4 living creatures, and they're all worshiping God because now it's happened. Now the scroll, it's not completely open yet, but much of it has been opened, and the people are there. Amen. Praise and glory and wisdom and thanks and honor and power and strength be to our God forever and ever. What are they saying here? He knows what he's doing. We didn't understand all the suffering and death again and again and again, but he knows what he's doing. He's done it. They're here now. Hallelujah. And then you have this amazing scene. This amazing scene where one of the elders turns to John, who knows nothing. John has no idea what he's looking at. And I think God does this with us a lot. This elder turns to John and he says, "Who are these people, John? Where did they come from? Do you understand what you're looking at, John?" And John, I've mentioned this before, I think, because I just love this part in Revelation. "Sir, you know." Are you kidding me? I think that's what John is saying. You're asking me? I have no idea what I'm looking at. But the elder just wanted to tell John all along. These are the ones who have come out of the great tribulation. They have washed their robes and made them white in the blood of the Lamb. Now, at some point, maybe next week, we'll do a great tribulation tour. We'll find out exactly what that term means. It is a loaded term in the Bible. It does mean, in many contexts, it means a period of 7 years at the end of the age when things are going to get worse than they've ever been before. But we've also already seen it. We've seen that in the church of Philadelphia, there's going to be a great tribulation. What the great tribulation is, okay, is all this stuff that happens in our lives over and over, building up in cycles throughout history, leading up to a final great tribulation at the end, which will be unlike anything that's come before. That's what it is. All of these people, these are the believers of all the ages. They're not just the ones who came from this 7-year period at the end. They are those, but they're also us. One of the things that's happening here is this elder is calling your life a great tribulation. Here are the ones. One day we will stand in this multitude, and we will be some of those who have come out of, maybe not the final great tribulation, we'll see, but the great tribulation of all of human history. That's why they're desperate for that scroll to be opened, even though it's so full of death, because it's the only way for us to get home.